Andrew, there are currently 43 police forces in England and Wales, and responsibility for them is shared between chief constables, the police authorities who oversee strategy, and then you've got the Home Secretary sitting on top of all of that. But under the new plans, police authorities would disappear altogether, and instead we would have these elected commissioners chosen by the local community and a police crime panel to oversee them. Each commissioner would set the strategy for its force and hold the chief constable to account, as well as having the ability to hire and fire them. But the chief constable retains the operational independence to run his or her own force. Each commissioner would be elected for 4 years, serve a maximum of 2 terms starting in May of 2012. London, though, is a special case. It's going to be exempt because the Metropolitan Police Commissioner, Britain's top police officer, is appointed by the Home Secretary in consultation with the Mayor. The Home Affairs Select Committee has said that senior police officers who want to be elected commissioners should wait 4 years before standing, as otherwise they could be in a position of scrutinising decisions they've made while still in office. And there's been criticism that police chiefs will be forced into popular choices. For example, choosing between clearing up local crime and putting resources into combating those unseen, rather complicated threats. Labour says the changes will cost a lot and have little impact. Vernon Coker, the shadow policing minister, said at a time when police funding is being slashed by 20%, people simply will not understand why the government wants to spend an estimated £100 million on this. Earlier today, I spoke to Rob Garnham. Rob is the chair of the Association of Police Authorities, and I began by asking him what he thought the pitfalls of this plan might be.
We're worried about, first of all, the costs of implementing this. We think an independent report has shown that it'll cost over £100 million extra to bring in a new governance system compared with what we've got at the moment. We're worried about the politicisation of policing, bringing real overt politics into policing. The work that is carried on at the moment by 17 members of police authorities, that's done in a consensual, collegiate way where politics can't rule. Placing the work of 17 into the hands of one, we think risks politicising. And also, we're going to an election system where we think, will it represent all the communities that policing has to represent? We need trust and confidence of our communities, so we need to make sure there's across-the-board representation in the governance.
I did you a disservice at the beginning of all this because I just described you as the chair of the Association of Police Authorities, but you're also a Conservative councillor. Now, I would have thought that your party would have talked to somebody like you before they launched a plan like this.
We've had a number of discussions, and I think it's something all parties go through, where not every member of the party, not every expert in the party will agree. We have differences of opinion, and I have said as chairman of the APA, and personally I think this is the wrong way to go, having directly elected commissioners in charge of policing. I think there's other ways we could have gone. We could have improved some of the things we do, but to spend £100 million on bringing in a system of direct elections, how will that improve policing? How will the people in the street feel safer?
Well, you know what your leadership says about this, and if you don't, let me remind you. They say it will make you accountable. It will give a face to the public for somebody's door to knock on if they're not happy with the way policing is going.
Well, at the moment, as a chair of police authority, people know me, and I do knock on doors. I'm an elected councillor, but there's the checks and balances provided by our non-elected colleagues, our independent members. But actually, is it all about visibility? Are we doing all of this just because we're saying police authorities are not visible? I think we're extremely visible, especially when it comes to setting the council tax, the precept that pays for policing, and especially when it comes to choosing chief constables, when it comes to setting policing plans. We sit down with local people. I see a lot more people through my police work than I do as a councillor.
Well, we're joined now by Keith Vaz. He's the chairman of the Home Affairs Select Committee. Welcome back to the Daily Politics. Because this has become a party political issue now, I guess it's your own committee probably hasn't got a unanimous view on this, does it?
Well, as we said in the report, Andrew, there are different views from members of the committee. We didn't consider those views. We didn't look at the principle of the elected commissioner. We looked at the practicalities of what was going to happen once they were implemented. This is government policy. Each of the parties actually had a different view on this.
Yep.
We came to the conclusion that this is a huge change, a lot of responsibility on one man or woman covering a very wide geographical area. And that's why we felt it was important for a new charter to be instituted that sets out clearly the responsibilities of the Commissioner, the Chief Constable, as well as the Home Office, because this could be a source of problems in the future.
To make things clear. And you also had this idea that if you had been a Chief Constable, there had to be a window where you couldn't then become the Police Commissioner.
Absolutely. Obviously, we don't want to limit who should stand to be the Commissioner. I mean, anyone in this room, if they choose they want to do so, can do so. But we did feel that if you're a Chief Constable serving in your local area, that you should not be able to be a Commissioner, because you will be scrutinising your own decisions.
That's quite sensible, is it not, Chris Grayling?
Well, I mean, a number of sensible things that the Home Affairs Select Committee have brought forward.
What about this one?
I think there's a lot to be said for having some degree of restriction. I don't think it just applies to Chief Constables. I think it applies to serving army officers in an area, to serving members of Parliament, for example. I think there are a number of caveats one would want to put in place. I think in the context of all of this, you have to look not simply at the local plan, but what we're doing nationally. We are seeking to reduce the role of the Home Office in operational policing, less bureaucratic interference from the centre, fewer guidelines, less of the heavy hand of Whitehall on the shoulder of the Chief Constable. But to counterbalance that, you need stronger and more visible local accountability. And the problem is, I mean, we have good police authorities, we have bad police authorities, but what they have in common is that they are generally speaking invisible to the public. What this will do is create much more visible, accessible local accountability, someone where people can turn to say, we don't think we're doing enough in this county to combat antisocial behaviour, for example. And I think that'll be a really big and positive change.
What would be wrong with that?
Well, a Labour in government focused very much on neighbourhood policing and the things that matter to people on the doorstep and you know, making sure that the police were responsive. And I think that's worked without this huge extra layer, which is going to cost £136 million at a time when the forces are being cut by 20%. Estimates say that we could lose up to 40,000 police officers. And so you can have all of the decoration on top of the tree, but there won't be much underneath it.
Is that right, Keith Vaz? Is it going to cost another 130?
Well,
is that the net extra cost?
We don't know, because we don't have all the figures, and that's one of the problems. Another problem is it would have been helpful if the government had shared their proposals with Parliament to enable the committee to look at those proposals and not publish them on the day that we publish our report. So we will have
you had to publish your report before you had seen.
Well, of course.
Why didn't you wait?
Well, because we didn't have the timetable from the government.
Don't you have to go back now and do the report again?
We will, I'm sure members of the committee will want to revisit this. I mean, this is not going to happen until 2012, so there is still time to tweak it to make sure that it's the right approach. But the previous Labour government, Mary, as you know, had proposals for directly elected police authorities, and then Jackie Smith dropped them right at the last moment. So I think this is an issue which needs further debate, but by and large we feel we need to have these safeguards in there. It is a good thing that people should feel that their police commissioner is accountable to them, but it is a very, very big job. This is not going to be like Gotham City, where Commissioner Gordon puts up the light and Batman as the local chief constable arrives in order to get things done. Well, it's not.
Well,
no.
what's the point?
Well, the point is, I think what people want to see is crime brought under control, and at the end of the day, the police commissioner is going to be judged by that.
Of course,
it's a tough job.
Will the police commissioner have any kind of backup? Will there be an office of the police commissioner?
Yes, there'll be a small secretariat working with the police commissioner down to him or her to decide the shape of that, set the budget for it and be accountable for that locally. They'll also have a panel working with them, a sort of advisory panel that will be representative of local organisations to ensure that they're not simply operating in isolation, that there is a real mechanism for consultation with the local community in between election times.
Is there a danger that nobody will vote?
I don't think so. Actually, I think people are more likely to vote if you're actually tangibly voting for something that people feel very strongly about, the person who's going to be accountable for policing in your area. I think, frankly, they're more likely to vote.
Did the committee look at the government's position is that operational matters, operational independence stays with the Chief Constable and his people, or her people. But is it clear what is operational and what is strategy?
Well, this is a very important point, Andrew. It's actually the Ark of the Covenant of policing, because it is not defined anywhere. And what we think is very important is we should have an absolute definition of the role and responsibility of the Chief Constable, what the Commissioner can and cannot do, and indeed the involvement of the Home Office, which they are involved at the moment in the hiring and firing of senior officers, whether they're going to retain that role.